Hello and welcome to Church at Home with Rachel for Monday, the 20th of March. I would like to shout out to Stephen Wallace. Happy birthday, my friend. I am praying for you and I hope you have an absolutely incredible day. For the last week or so, this is something I was listening to on the radio a week and a bit ago about in Arizona, the Board of Education or whatever it's called down there created a hotline for issues for parents and family and community members that they could send in their concerns about what was being taught in the schools. And this, I don't know, I haven't been paying much attention. I've been busy as a one-armed paper hanger lately, so I'm not entirely sure if this has changed or if this is still on. But um, based on the information I had last week, this is what I want to just chat about. This idea of a hotline for calling in and talking about schools, what's being taught, ratting out teachers. I remember when I was in school 1,000 years ago, I think I was in about grade 5 or 6. I was living in Hanover, so grade 5 or 6. And we had to do a book report on a historical figure. And we could choose our own. So I was the library, and it's a small town library, school library. So how many historical figures do they have that are for that age group? And so there were several copies of the Diary of Anne Frank. So I picked up that book and I read that book. And it was a hard read. It was a really hard read because Anne was approximately, I think, my age. And if you don't know about Anne Frank, she was a Jewish girl with her family in Germany in World War II. And friends of theirs hid them for a very long time until they were found in a secret room and they were taken to one of the concentration camps. I think it was Auschwitz. I'm not entirely sure. It was a long time I read that book, a long time ago. And Anne Frank was put to death. The fact is, I couldn't have read that book if our school systems hadn't been open to letting us read difficult things, letting us read a book that would challenge things, that would make me ask questions and would talk about history in a way that would make some people very uncomfortable. When I was living there, where that school was, it was a school filled with a very big German population in that area, all of whom had been in Canada for years. They were there long before World War II. But that particular population, some of the people went through some difficult times because of what happened in Germany. As a matter of fact, we had a young student move. He and his family moved from Germany to that town, and he was in our classroom for maybe 3 weeks when I was in grade 5, and they moved away because their family was given such a hard time. Now, it wasn't a normal place to, an immigrant family. They came because there was a job that his dad could get. I think he had 4 or 5 brothers and sisters. They were all beautiful, blonde-haired people who really struggled. They only spoke German, and he was trying so hard to learn English, and he was doing a great job. And he was the oldest, I believe, of his family, and trying with his parents to help them figure out grocery shopping and things like that. Um, but they moved to a bigger urban center where there would be more German people because of the way they were treated by the people in this small town community, which I'm praying that I believe that community has changed enough that wouldn't happen again. However, it wouldn't if there had been a case where the Board of Education had said, we feel uncomfortable enough about all that stuff that we don't want that talked about, that book probably would have been pulled off the shelf. I remember when I was in grade 10 and I was taking grade 11 English, and Mrs. Marchese was our English teacher, and she was so excited that we were going to read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn that year because the Board of Education in which we lived was having a conversation about putting it on a banned books list, along with Catcher in the Rye and a few other books that I had already read for school by that time, because they were deemed inappropriate. Um, no actual reasons were given. They didn't say it was because the N word was in there or anything else, but it was inappropriate. I don't recall whether or not those books were actually banned after that because I'd already studied them and hence wasn't paying much attention. None of the books for grade 12 English had been banned yet, so no big deal. This idea that people who are not educated as teachers could go ahead and make decisions about what is appropriate or inappropriate for teachers to teach absolutely astounds me. I love parents. I think parents are awesome and they do the best they can in most cases for their children. But the reason we send our kids to school is because our parents, or as parents, we can't teach them everything they need to know. We just can't. Some of it's because of time, and yes, there are some people who homeschool. There are still some standards that are set by provinces and school boards, and imagine in states as well, about what homeschooling must entail so that those children will be fully educated to be able to live in society. But there are some standards established. And the fact is that, like, for instance, when my stepson was living with us, I had I had no clue how to do his math, and I'm good at math. Like the way they were teaching him how to do math, the whole new math thing, not a clue. If they had expected the teachers or the parents to determine how math would be shared in classrooms, none of the kids would be learning anything because there's no possible way we could figure that out. Because we just didn't know. Didn't mean the parents were stupid. Just meant the parents, that's not their bailiwick. It's not their area of expertise. When it comes to things like teaching, I was listening to someone on the news talking about this issue in Arizona, a politician. He said his 6-year-old daughter, she spends most of her time at school. Most of her waking hours are spent in school. And that's where she's learning how to socialize. It's where she's learning how to have empathy. It's where she's learning how to ask questions, to think critically. You know, if somebody says to you, go jump off that bridge because I said so, we want our children to be able to think critically and say, okay, that person is a person of authority over me and they just told me to go jump off a bridge. Should I do that? Is that a good idea? Critical thinking tells us to analyze quickly, like that, analyze the order or analyze the information and determine, is this a smart thing to do? So if the principal were to say, everybody go jump off that bridge, critical thinking, which is taught in schools, would help them realize, well, you know what? I don't know how to swim, and there's a river beneath the bridge, even though it's only 3 feet high above the water. I don't know how to swim, so I'm going to say no. I'm going to say to my principal, I am not going to jump off that bridge, not to disobey you, but because I cannot swim. Critical thinking. If we don't teach our children critical thinking, if we don't teach them empathy to strangers or to other people outside of our households, where where are they going to learn that? They learn that at school, where they're interacting with adults and children and strangers and other people. When they're learning things in school and we teach them critical thinking, we help them to understand. So maybe they do hear about, for instance, white supremacy, because you know what? It's a thing. And I'm aware of it because as a white person, I am becoming more and more aware of those things that I can take for granted because I'm white. People don't look twice at me if I walk into a store, you know, and I've seen people looking at people of different ethnicities who are checked out twice or their bags are checked at Walmart where mine isn't even, have a good day, ma'am, versus the person behind me who happens to have a different skin color. Can I see your receipt, please? You can't tell me that every time that happens, it's simply luck of the draw for that person. It's because we do actually have biases. We do have things that we don't even realize we have. That's why it's important to learn about them. It's important to learn critical thinking so that we can determine, am I setting aside this person because of this color of their skin, or am I setting aside this person because I saw them pocket something that they didn't pay for? Not assuming that they pocketed something. The difference between the assumption that they might have and I saw them do it, that should be why we pull them aside, not because their skin color says, well, maybe they did. They're more apt to than that white woman over there. I have been witness to way too many white teenagers doing just that thing. So you can't tell me it's only about ethnicity. It just isn't. But this idea of having a hotline, I mean, first, there's my argument. We need our teachers who are taught and educated in how to teach our children, and they know what is needed for further education, trade school, college, university. They know what things our children need to learn so that they can do well, not just academically, like I know that 2 plus 2 is 4, and 4 times 4 is 16, but I also know that, I know what it is to have social skills, and I know what it is to be able to read body language and to have empathy, and I know what it is to think critically and analyze something and sort through to say, is this true or not? Is this something that makes sense or not? The other thing is, getting back to my analogy of Anne Frank would not have been found if someone hadn't called a hotline. If someone hadn't gone to that tip line and said to the Gestapo, I'm not sure for 100%, but I have a hunch that that family over there is hiding Jews. We don't know if they were outed for hiding a Jewish family because the people who outed them actually knew for a fact that they were there, or whether they just hated them. They didn't like that family because they were sympathetic, so they wanted to get them in trouble. Because you know darn well that family didn't get off scot-free. Doesn't work that way. Didn't work that way. Now that this tip line, this hotline has been set up, and they've got all these things, there's going to be somebody who investigates each claim, and somebody then who will go out and instruct and make sure that those teachers are doing the right thing and that corrections are made. Nothing hasty is going to happen. My bottom, nothing hasty is going to happen. When we set up a society in which we have tip lines and hotlines for people, do you really believe that only people who honestly have a concern about something are going to call in? But what about that mother who went to a parent-teacher interview and just really didn't like the teacher and decides, I'm going to get her, I'm going to get him, I'm going to call in and say that they talked about white supremacy, they talked about enslavement, they talked about gay people in classroom. Even if they didn't, it will not take long before the fact of a hotline, a tip line, is abused. And it won't take much longer after that before that just begins the whole spiral downward until it's not just a tip line about school, but it's a tip line about your neighbors, and it's a tip line about us and them and everybody checking out who's my enemy. We don't need to focus on our enemies, folks. We need to focus on how we can be friends, how we can help one another. So I know this has been a long video, but it is a passionate thing for me, and education and community. We need to not go the way of 1930s Germany. And sometimes above and below the border, it's starting to feel like that. There are things that are said, comments that are made, decisions being made, politics that are being thrown about that really indicate that we are heading toward what people seem to think they desire is authoritarianism. Having some big guy up there who's going to make every decision because they'll make every decision that's good for all of us. When the fact is, every decision that he will make, because it'll never be a woman, every decision he will make will be good for he and his cronies. And it won't be good for the rest of us, but it'll be too late. And it starts like this, with a tip line, with determining what someone else can and cannot learn. You make the decision about what you want your child to learn, and if you don't like it, homeschool. But don't tell other people what their children can and cannot learn. Let them figure that out for themselves. Have a good day. God bless you. And let's work together to make this world a place where all of our children have a fighting chance to learn critical thinking, empathy, and the ability to go on and do what they're called to do, whether it's become a garbage man, a plumber, a doctor, an astronaut, a teacher, a stay-at-home mom or dad, a gardener, whatever it might be. Let's give them the tools they need so they can figure that out. But if we don't give them critical thinking, they'll never be able to figure it out. They'll just do what they're told. And as much as that might sound good for a parent, when your kids are like 8, it won't be so good for you when they're still coming to you when they're 38 and saying, okay, Mom, what do I do now? We need to teach our children how to be people, discerning, critically thinking people. Have a great day. God bless. And I will see you again tomorrow for Church at Home with Rachel. Happy birthday, Stephen.